The rain on Station Kalos 9 was not real rain. It was recycled water falling from broken pipes in the ceiling of the salvage yard. Tai-Ho stood in the crowd of buyers and watched the drops fall on rusted ship hulls. He had 17 credits in his account. That was enough for food this week, maybe next week too. It was not enough for a ship. But Tai-Ho came to every auction anyway. He liked to dream. 3 years ago, he had been a Federation freight pilot. He had worn the blue uniform and flown cargo between the inner worlds. Then one day, his ship received a distress call from a refugee transport near the border. The refugees were running from a war zone. Federation rules said he should ignore them and continue his route. Tai-Ho did not ignore them. He saved 43 people that day. The Federation took his license the next week. Now he lived in the outer rim, fixing broken machines for small money, sleeping in a rented room the size of a closet. The auctioneer was a fat alien with green skin and 4 arms. His voice was loud and bored at the same time. He had been selling ship parts all morning, engine cores, navigation systems, life support units. The corporate buyers raised their hands and spent thousands of credits like it was nothing. Tai-Ho watched and waited. He did not know what he was waiting for. Then the auctioneer pointed to the far corner of the yard, where something large sat under a dirty sheet. 2 workers pulled the sheet away. Tai-Ho felt his breath stop. The ship was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was maybe 200 meters long, shaped like a curved blade. The hull was made of some dark metal that seemed to eat the light around it. Strange patterns covered every surface, geometric shapes that made his eyes hurt if he looked too long. The ship had no visible weapons, no engine ports, no windows. It looked ancient. It looked alien. It looked dead. The auctioneer checked his data pad. His 4 arms moved nervously. He did not like this ship. Nobody liked this ship. The auctioneer announced that the vessel was listed as hull designation unknown. Federation scanners showed no power, no systems, no life. The metal could not be identified. The ship was sold as is, for scrap value only. The minimum bid was 1 credit. The yard went quiet. The corporate buyers looked at the ship and then looked away. One of them laughed. Another shook his head. Nobody raised a hand. The auctioneer waited. 10 seconds, 20 seconds. He seemed annoyed. He asked if anyone would bid 1 credit for 200 meters of scrap metal. Nobody moved. Tai-Ho did not know why he opened his mouth. Maybe he was tired of watching. Maybe he wanted to feel like a buyer just once. Maybe the ship called to him somehow. He would never know for sure. Tai-Ho said he would bid half a credit. The auctioneer stared at him. The crowd turned to look. A human in worn clothes making a joke bid on a dead ship. Someone laughed again. The auctioneer's green face twisted with irritation. He said that half a credit was not a real bid. Then he paused. He looked at the ship. He looked at his schedule. He had 50 more items to sell today, and this unknown hull was wasting his time. The auctioneer said fine. He accepted the bid of half a credit. The unknown vessel now belonged to the human in the back row. He told Tai-Ho to get it out of his yard by tomorrow. Tai-Ho stood frozen. He had meant it as a joke. Now he owned a ship. After the auction, Tai-Ho walked to his friend Yuna's repair bay. She was under a broken shuttle when he arrived, her legs sticking out, her tools making angry sounds. Yuna had been a military engineer before she got tired of following stupid orders. Now she fixed civilian ships and complained about everything. Tai-Ho told her he bought a ship. Yuna slid out from under the shuttle. Her face was covered in grease. She asked how much he paid. Tai-Ho told her half a credit. She stared at him for a long time. Then she asked what was wrong with it. Tai-Ho said everything. The ship was dead, made of unknown metal, and covered in strange patterns that nobody could read. Yuna called him an idiot. Tai-Ho agreed with her. But he still wanted to see it. They went to the ship together that night. It sat in Docking Bay 77, alone in the darkness. The station had given Tai-Ho the worst bay, the one with broken lights and leaking pipes. Nobody wanted to be near the unknown vessel. Up close, the ship was even stranger. The dark metal seemed to move in the shadows, though Tai-Ho knew that was impossible. The geometric patterns on the hull were not random. They repeated in sequences like a language or a mathematical formula. Tai-Ho reached out and touched the surface. It was warm. That should not be possible for a dead ship in a cold docking bay. He found an opening that might be a door. The metal had a sharp edge where the hull was damaged. When Tai-Ho pulled himself inside, the edge cut his palm. He swore and wiped the blood on the wall. The inside of the ship was dark and empty. His flashlight showed corridors that stretched further than they should. The ship was bigger on the inside. That was impossible, but Tai-Ho saw it with his own eyes. He walked for 10 minutes and did not reach the end. Yuna called him on his communicator. She was still outside, refusing to enter. She told him to stop being stupid and come back. Tai-Ho turned to leave. As he did, something caught his eye. Deep in the corridor, far away, a single light flickered. Just for a moment. A tiny blue glow, there and then gone. Tai-Ho told himself it was nothing. A reflection from his flashlight. A trick of his tired eyes. He walked back to the entrance and climbed out of the ship. That night, Tai-Ho dreamed. He stood on a world with 2 suns. The sky was purple and gold. Around him, great towers rose into the clouds, made of the same dark metal as his ship. Beings moved through the towers, beings of light and shadow, too beautiful and terrible to look at directly. One of them turned to face him. It had no face, but Tai-Ho felt it looking into his soul. A voice spoke. The words were not in any language Tai-Ho knew, but he understood them anyway. The voice said they had been waiting. It said the garden was ready to bloom. It said the children were coming home. Tai-Ho woke up screaming. His room was dark and small and normal. The dream faded like smoke, but when he looked at his hand, at the cut from the ship's edge, he saw that the wound had healed completely. There was no scar. There was no mark at all. Only a faint pattern on his skin, geometric shapes that glowed blue for just a moment before disappearing. Tai-Ho sat in the darkness until morning. He did not sleep again. He knew, without knowing how, that everything was about to change. The lights in the corridor would flicker whenever Tai-Ho walked past. His datapad filled with symbols that no translation program could read. Other ships in nearby bays reported power problems. Their engines would start on their own in the middle of the night. Their computers would display the same geometric patterns that covered the dead ship's hull. The station manager told Tai-Ho to move his ship. Tai-Ho asked where. The manager had no answer. Nobody wanted the unknown vessel near them, but nobody could explain why. On the 3rd day, Tai-Ho found someone inside his ship. She was small and thin, with short black hair and quick eyes. She sat in one of the dark corridors, her back against the wall, a scanning device in her hands. When Tai-Ho's flashlight found her, she did not run. She looked up at him with a tired face and said hello. Her name was Jisoo. She was a xenolinguist, a person who studied alien languages. She used to work for the Federation's research division, studying ancient ruins found on dead worlds across the galaxy. Then she published a paper about what she found in those ruins. The Federation did not like her paper. They said it was lies. They burned her research and put her name on a wanted list. Now she lived in the lower levels of Station Kalos 9, hiding from Federation eyes, studying whatever she could find. Tai-Ho asked what she was doing on his ship. Jisoo pointed her scanner at the walls. She said the patterns on his ship matched the patterns she found in ancient ruins. Ruins that were older than the Federation, older than any known civilization. She believed his ship was built by a species that existed before recorded history, a species the Federation had worked very hard to keep secret. Tai-Ho did not know what to say. He asked how old. Jisoo said maybe 50,000 years, maybe more. They sat together in the dark corridor for a long time. Jisoo told Taiho about the ruins she had studied. They were scattered across the galaxy, hidden on worlds that nobody visited. Inside the ruins, she found the same patterns, the same metal, the same impossible technology. She also found images of the beings who built them. They were tall and made of light, and they looked almost like humans, but not quite. The Federation found these ruins too. They sealed them. They classified all information. They made it illegal to study them or talk about them. Jisoo asked herself why. What was the Federation so afraid of? Taiho thought about his dream. The beings of light. The voice that said the children were coming home. Before he could answer, they heard footsteps. Someone else was entering the ship. Taiho pulled Jisoo into the shadows. They watched as a young man walked past, carrying a bag of equipment. He moved with confidence, like he knew where he was going. He had messy hair and a face that looked familiar. Taeho recognized him. It was his younger brother, Do-hwan. Taeho stepped out of the shadows and grabbed Do-hwan's arm. Do-hwan jumped in surprise, then relaxed when he saw who it was. He smiled and said, "Hello, brother." They had not seen each other in 2 years. Do-hwan had been a student at the Federation Academy, the best school for technology and coding in the galaxy. He was brilliant, maybe the smartest person Taiho had ever known. He was also reckless and stupid. Taiho asked what Do-hwan was doing here. Do-hwan's smile faded. He said he was in trouble. He had hacked into Federation military networks to find information about their father, who disappeared during a classified mission 15 years ago. The Federation caught him. He ran. Now they were looking for him. Taiho was angry. He said Do-hwan should have stayed safe, should have finished his studies, should have forgotten about their father. Do-hwan said he could not forget. He needed to know the truth. Jisoo stepped forward. She asked what Do-hwan found in the military networks. Do-hwan looked at her with suspicious eyes. Taiho told him she was a friend. Do-hwan hesitated, then answered. He found files about something called Project Homecoming. The files were encrypted, but he broke the encryption. Inside, he found references to ancient technology, to ruins across the galaxy, to a species called the Architects. He found his father's name on a list of researchers assigned to study architect technology. The list had 20 names. All 20 were marked as deceased. Jisoo's face went pale. She said the architects were the beings she had been researching, the builders of the ruins, the creators of the patterns. Do-hwan looked around at the dark corridors. He asked if this ship was built by the architects. Taeho said he did not know. Do-hwan pulled a device from his bag. He said there was one way to find out. He found a panel in the wall that looked different from the rest. It had a small indent, like a port for connecting equipment. Do-hwan connected his device. Nothing happened for a moment. Then the ship woke up. Lights activated along the corridors, blue and soft. The walls began to glow with the geometric patterns pulsing like a heartbeat. The air grew warm. A sound filled the ship, low and deep, like a giant taking its first breath after a long sleep. And then a voice spoke. It did not come from any speaker. It came from everywhere at once, from the walls and the floor and the air itself. The voice spoke in a language that should have been impossible to understand. But Taiho understood it perfectly. So did Jisoo. So did Do-hwan. The voice said that crew had been detected. Human signatures confirmed. Compatibility was optimal. The ship was awaiting command authorization. Taiho found himself speaking without thinking. He asked who the ship was. The voice answered. It said its true designation was a mathematical sequence that human minds could not process, but it could translate. In human terms, it said its name was Haewon. Jisoo whispered that Haewon meant grace, or garden. The ship was called the Garden. Do-hwan's device was going crazy, showing data streams that moved too fast to read. He said the ship was not just alive. It was intelligent. It was ancient. And it had been waiting for them. Tai-Ho asked what the ship was waiting for. Haiwan answered with a question of its own. It asked if Tai-Ho was ready to know the truth about his species, about where humans came from, about why they existed. Before Tai-Ho could answer, alarms began to sound outside the ship. Red lights flashed through the docking bay windows. Yuna's voice came through Tai-Ho's communicator, scared and urgent. She said Federation patrol ships had arrived at the station. They were scanning every docking bay. They were looking for someone. Their scans had detected an impossible energy signature from Bay 77. The Federation had found them. Tai-Ho looked at Jisoo, who was wanted for her research. He looked at Do-Hwan, who was wanted for his hacking. He looked at the walls of the ancient ship that glowed with light from 50,000 years ago. He asked Haiwan if the ship could fly. The voice answered with something that sounded almost like pride. It said the ship could do much more than fly. Tai-Ho made his decision. He told everyone to hold on to something. Then he spoke to the ship, to Haiwan, and gave his first command as captain. He said one word, "Go." The ship moved. The Haiwan did not fly like other ships. It did not use engines or fuel. It simply decided to be somewhere else, and then it was there. One moment they were in docking bay 77, surrounded by metal walls. The next moment they were in open space, stars burning all around them. Tai-Ho fell to his knees. The movement had been instant, but his body felt like it had been pulled through a hole in reality. Jisoo was on the floor, breathing hard. Do-Hwan was laughing, his eyes wide with wonder. Behind them, Station Kalos 9 grew smaller. Federation patrol ships turned toward them, their weapons powering up. Warning signals filled the Haiwan's bridge, which had formed around them from the walls themselves. Screens showed the patrol ships, their weapons, their targeting systems. One of the Federation ships fired. Tai-Ho shouted for shields. The Haiwan responded. A field of blue light appeared around the ship, thin as paper, bright as a star. The Federation weapon hit the shield and simply stopped existing. Not deflected, not absorbed. The energy was unmade at the molecular level. The Federation ships stopped firing. They floated in space, uncertain. Tai-Ho asked Haiwan what kind of ship it was. The voice answered that it was a vessel of the architects, built for exploration and protection. It was one of many such vessels, created before the current galactic cycle began. Jisoo stood up slowly. She asked what the architects were. What happened to them? The Haiwan was quiet for a moment. When it spoke again, its voice seemed sad. It said the architects were the first intelligent species in the galaxy. They existed for millions of years. They built wonders that current civilizations could not imagine. They traveled to every corner of the universe. And then they realized they were dying, not from war or disease, but from time itself. Their species had reached its end. Nothing they built could save them. So they made a choice. They would not let their knowledge die with them. They would plant seeds. They created new species. They modified primitive life forms across thousands of worlds, giving them the potential to grow, to think, to build. They left their technology behind, hidden and waiting, programmed to activate when the right species found it. Humans were one of their creations, not just one of many, but the closest to the architects themselves. Humans carried architect genes in their blood. Humans alone could fully bond with architect technology. Humans were meant to be the inheritors of everything the architects left behind. The bridge was silent. Do-Hwan spoke first. He asked why nobody knew this, why the Federation kept it secret. Haiwan answered. The Federation discovered the truth centuries ago. They found architect ruins and architect ships. They learned what humans were, and they became afraid. The Federation was built on balance. Different species working together, none more powerful than the others. If humans learned they were inheritors of the most advanced civilization in history, that balance would break. Humans would demand their inheritance. Other species would see them as threats. The Federation would collapse. So the Federation Council made a decision. They buried the truth. They sealed the ruins. They destroyed the ships they found and killed the researchers who studied them. They told no one. Taiho thought of his father. 20 researchers, all marked deceased. Now he understood why. A new signal appeared on the screens. A Federation command ship was approaching, much larger than the patrol vessels. Its weapons were charging. A voice came through the communication system, cold and official. The voice identified itself as Commander Yunji of Federation Naval Intelligence. It ordered Taiho to power down his vessel and prepare to be boarded. It said the ship he was flying was classified technology. It said Do Huan was a wanted criminal. It said resistance would result in destruction. Taiho looked at his brother. He looked at Jisoo. He thought about his father, who died trying to learn the truth. He thought about all the humans who lived their lives never knowing what they really were. He asked Haewon if it could outrun the Federation ships. Haewon said yes. It could also destroy them. Its weapons could end the entire fleet in seconds. Taiho said no. He did not want to kill anyone. He just wanted to leave. Haewon seemed pleased by this answer. It said coordinates were available for a place the Federation could not follow. A place where more architect technology waited. Was Taiho ready? Taiho said yes. The Haewon moved again. This time, it did not just travel through space. It traveled through something else, a dimension between dimensions, a path that only architect ships could use. The stars stretched into lines. Reality bent around them. Commander Unji's command ship disappeared from the screens. When the movement stopped, they were somewhere else entirely. A dying star burned red in the center of the screen. Around it, in a perfect ring, floated hundreds of structures. They were space stations, but massive beyond anything Taiho had seen. Each one was the size of a moon, and between them, docked in neat rows, were ships. Hundreds of ships. Ships like the Haewon. Ships that had been waiting for 50,000 years. Jisoo fell into a chair, tears running down her face. She said it was real. Everything she had studied, everything she had believed, it was all real. Do Huan was already at a control panel, his fingers moving fast. He said the stations were sending data to the Haewon. Archives, history, technology, everything the architects wanted their children to have. Taiho stood at the center of the bridge and looked at the fleet of ancient ships. He was a salvage trader who paid half a credit for a dead vessel. Now he stood at the center of humanity's inheritance. He asked Haewon what would happen when the Federation learned about this place. Haewon answered honestly. The Federation would come. They would try to destroy everything. They would not succeed, but they would try. War was coming. The question was what kind of war it would be. Taiho closed his eyes. He thought about Commander Unji's voice, cold and certain. He thought about the Federation Council, hiding the truth for centuries. He thought about humans across the galaxy, living in ignorance, never knowing their potential. He opened his eyes. He told Haewon to begin waking the other ships. He told Do Huan to download everything from the archives. He told Jisoo to study the architect history and find out what they really intended. Then he asked Haewon to send a message, not to the Federation, but to Earth, to every human colony in the galaxy. A simple message, hidden in frequencies the Federation did not monitor. The message said that the truth was coming. It said that humans were more than they knew. It said that anyone who wanted answers should follow the signal to the edge of known space. Haewon asked if Taiho understood what he was starting. Taiho said yes. He was starting a revolution, but he was going to do it without firing a single weapon, if he could. Across the galaxy, humans began to wake up screaming. Factory workers on mining colonies, soldiers in Federation uniforms, children in schools, teachers, doctors, prisoners, they all dreamed the same dream. They saw ships of dark metal waiting in the light of a dying star. They heard a voice telling them to come home. Most tried to ignore the dreams. They took medicine to help them sleep. They told themselves it was stress or bad food or nothing at all. But the dreams continued, night after night, until ignoring them became impossible. Some listened. On the agricultural colony of New Busan, a young engineer named Sujin woke from the dream and knew she had to leave. She did not tell her family where she was going. She took a small shuttle and flew toward the outer rim, following coordinates that had appeared in her mind. She was not alone. Thousands of humans were doing the same thing. They left their homes, their jobs, their lives. They traveled toward something they could not explain, pulled by a force older than civilization. The Federation noticed. Admiral Kyung-soo stood on the bridge of the battleship Iron Will and watched the reports come in. Human officers leaving their posts, human workers abandoning factories, human colonists disappearing from entire sectors. It looked like a disease, spreading from system to system. Kyung-soo was the highest-ranking human in the Federation Navy. He had spent 40 years proving that humans could be trusted. He had followed every order, won every battle, sacrificed everything to earn his position. Now his own people were acting like they had lost their minds. The Federation Council called him to a private meeting. The chamber was dark, lit only by floating screens that showed the moving patterns of human migration. High Arbiter Moloch sat at the center, his Valori face impossible to read. His species had ruled the Federation since its founding. They believed they were the natural leaders of the galaxy. Moloch told Kyung-soo about the unknown ship that escaped from Station Kalos 9. He told him about the Architect Ring, the hidden fleet, the ancient technology. He told him that humanity was not just another species. They were inheritors of a dead civilization, designed to reclaim power that the Federation had buried for centuries. Kyung-soo listened in silence. Everything he believed was crashing down around him. Moloch gave him an order. Take a fleet to the Architect Ring. Destroy everything, the ships, the stations, the humans who had gathered there. Leave nothing behind. Kyung-soo asked what would happen if he refused. Moloch said the Federation had prepared for this day. There were weapons hidden across human space. Planet killers, buried in the cores of worlds, waiting to be activated. If Kyung-soo did not destroy the Architect Ring, the Council would destroy Earth and every human colony. Billions would die. Kyung-soo felt cold spread through his chest. He asked if Moloch would really kill billions of innocent people. Moloch's eyes showed no emotion. He said he would do what was necessary to protect the Federation. Humans were too dangerous to control. If they could not be controlled, they would be removed. Kyung-soo accepted the mission. He gathered a fleet of 200 warships and set course for the edge of known space. Human crews made up 30% of his force. They did not know what they were about to do. They trusted their admiral. They followed orders. At the Architect Ring, Taiho watched them come. The fleet appeared on long-range sensors, growing larger with each passing hour, 200 Federation warships against a handful of awakened Architect vessels. The numbers seemed hopeless. But Taiho had spent weeks in the archives. He understood now what Architect technology could do. A single Architect ship could destroy that entire fleet in minutes. The weapons were ready. The power was available. All he had to do was give the order. Do-hwan wanted to fight. He said the Federation had lied to them for centuries. They had killed their father. They were coming to destroy everything. Fighting back was not just justified, it was necessary. Jisoo disagreed. She said the architects did not just create humans. They created all the major species in the galaxy, including the Valori. Every species was meant to work together, each with different strengths. The Federation's hierarchy was a corruption of that vision. Fighting would only make things worse. Taiho listened to both of them. He thought about the humans in that Federation fleet, serving under Admiral Kyung-soo, believing they were doing the right thing. They were not his enemies. They were his people, trapped in a system built on lies. He made his decision. When the Federation fleet reached weapon range, Taiho took the Haiwan out alone. He flew toward the 200 warships with his shields down and his weapons cold. He broadcast a message on every frequency. He said he was not their enemy. He said he did not want war. He said he wanted to show them the truth if they were willing to see it. He sent them everything: the Architect archives, the history of human creation, the evidence of what the Federation had hidden, the records of 20 researchers killed for learning too much, including his own father. The fleet stopped advancing. Admiral Kyung-soo stood on his bridge and watched the data stream across his screens. His officers gathered around him, silent and pale. They were seeing the same thing he was seeing: the truth about their own species, the truth about everything. One of Kyung-soo's captains spoke first. She was young, ambitious, loyal. Her name was Mira. She asked if it was real. Kyung-soo did not answer. He could not find words. Mira made a choice. She announced that she would not attack her own inheritance. She was flying her ship toward the Architect Ring, not as an enemy, but as a human claiming what belonged to her people. She broke formation. Her ship moved toward Taiho's position. Kyung-soo ordered her to stop. She did not stop. Another captain followed, then another, then a dozen more. Human crews all across the fleet were making the same choice. They had seen the truth, and they could not unsee it. The non-human ships remained in formation, confused, waiting for orders. But the human ships were leaving one by one, flying toward the Architect Ring like dreamers waking up. Kyung-soo watched half his fleet fall apart. He could order the remaining ships to fire. He could still complete his mission. The planet killers were still waiting. Instead, he opened a channel to High Arbiter Mollix and said the mission had failed. He said humanity had made their choice, and he would not murder his own species for a lie. Then he turned off the communication system. In the Federation Council chamber, Mollix watched the reports come in. His face finally showed emotion: fear. He turned to his advisors and spoke two words that had not been spoken in 400 years of Federation history: activate the contingency. Across human space, ancient weapons began to wake up: Earth, New Sol, Horizon Prime. A dozen more colony worlds. Deep in their planetary cores, machines that had been sleeping for centuries were waking up. Federation engineers had buried them long ago, disguised as power stations or mining equipment. Nobody knew what they really were. Now they were counting down. Sujin was at the Architect Ring when the news arrived. She had bonded with one of the ancient ships, a vessel that called itself Miru, and the connection had changed her. She could feel the other ships in the fleet like extensions of her own body. She could hear the station networks humming with 50,000 years of knowledge. She could also feel the terror spreading across human space as people realized what was about to happen. Taiho gathered everyone on the bridge of the Haiwan. His brother Do-wan was there, his face tired from days of working in the archives. Jisoo stood beside him, holding a data pad full of architect history. Yuna had arrived 3 days ago, having stolen a shuttle and followed the signal like everyone else. Admiral Kyung-soo was there too, along with Captain Mira and dozens of other humans who had abandoned the Federation fleet. They looked at the countdown on the main screen. 12 hours until the contingency weapons activated. 12 hours to save billions of lives. Taiho asked Haiwan if the Architect ships could stop the weapons. Haiwan said yes. The ships were faster than anything in the galaxy. They could reach every target in time. They could disable the weapons or destroy them completely. But there was a cost. The Federation fleet was still out there, the non-human ships that had not defected. If the Architect ships spread across the galaxy, they would be vulnerable. The Federation could attack the ring while they were gone. They could destroy the stations, the archives, everything. Do-wan said it did not matter. They could rebuild stations. They could not rebuild dead planets. Taiho agreed. He gave the order. The architect fleet launched. 147 ships, each carrying a human commander, each flying toward a different world. They moved through the space between spaces, crossing light years and heartbeats. They appeared above Federation worlds, like stars being born. The contingency weapons were massive things, buried deep underground, powered by energy cores that could crack a planet in half. Federation defense systems tried to stop the Architect ships, but their weapons simply vanished against Architect shields. The ships landed, their crews found the weapons, and they shut them down one by one. Taiho took the Heiwan to Earth. The weapon there was the largest of all, buried beneath the Pacific Ocean. If it activated, the entire planet would break apart. 8 billion people would die in seconds. Taiho dove the Heiwan into the water. The ship was not designed for underwater travel, but it did not need to be. It simply moved through the ocean like the water was not there. They found the weapon at the bottom, a sphere of black metal the size of a small moon, pulsing with countdown lights. Dowan interfaced with the weapon's systems. He was shaking, his fingers moving faster than thought. The countdown showed 2 minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Dowan screamed in frustration. The encryption was too complex. He could not break it in time. Taiho put his hand on his brother's shoulder. He told Dowan to move aside. Then he placed his own hand on the weapon's surface. He did not know what he was doing. He acted on instinct, on the connection he felt to the architect technology that had recognized him from the moment his blood touched the Heiwan's hull. He pushed his mind into the weapon, feeling its systems like threads of fire running through his consciousness. The countdown stopped with 3 seconds remaining. The weapon powered down. The lights went dark. The Pacific Ocean was quiet. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Every contingency weapon was disabled or destroyed. Every human world was saved. The Federation's final solution had failed. High Arbiter Mollix received the reports in the council chamber. His advisors were fleeing, some to hidden bunkers, some to ships that would take them far from Federation space. They knew what was coming. They knew what humanity could do to them now. But nothing happened. For hours, Mollix waited for the attack, for the architect ships to appear above the Federation capital world, for the revenge that he had earned through centuries of lies and murder. Instead, a single ship arrived, the Heiwan. It landed in the plaza outside the council building. One man walked out. Taiho entered the chamber alone. Mollix asked if he had come to kill him. Taiho said no. He had come to offer a choice. He showed Mollix the architect archives. Not just the parts about humanity, but everything. The truth about all the species the architects created. The Vailori, the Thren, the Kasari, dozens of others. They were all children of the same creators. They were all meant to work together. The Federation's hierarchy was a mistake, not an evil conspiracy, but a natural result of fear and misunderstanding. The architects had not left instructions. They had not explained what they wanted. Different species had developed in isolation, each believing they were alone, each competing for resources and power. The truth could break the Federation apart, or it could save it. Taiho offered Mollix a deal: release everything. Share the truth with every species in the galaxy. Let them decide what kind of future they wanted to build. Mollix asked what would happen if he refused. Taiho said he would release the information anyway, but it would be better if it came from the Federation itself. It would be better if the change was peaceful. Mollix was silent for a long time. Then he reached for his communication console. The announcement went out across the galaxy. Every screen, every speaker, every data terminal. The High Arbiter of the Federation told the truth about the architects, about humanity, about all the species they had created. He apologized for the centuries of lies. He called for a new beginning. Commander Eunji was listening from her ship. She had been ordered to hunt Taiho across the galaxy. Instead, She had gathered evidence of Federation crimes, recording everything she saw. Now she released her own files, adding to the flood of truth. The galaxy did not change overnight. There was anger. There was confusion. There were riots on some worlds and celebrations on others. Old hatreds did not disappear just because people learned they shared a common origin. But something had shifted. The lie was broken. The future was open. 1 year later, Tai-Ho stood on the bridge of the HFY. The ship was part of a new fleet, a joint exploration force with crews from a dozen species. They were leaving known space, traveling to regions the architects had mapped but never colonized. There were more secrets out there, more technology, more answers waiting to be found. Yuna was the chief engineer, finally working on machines that challenged her skills. Jisoo led a team of researchers from every species, building a new understanding of galactic history. Dowan had been pardoned for his crimes and now worked on bridging Architect and Federation technology. Admiral Kyung-soo had retired from the Navy. He spent his days teaching young officers from all species about the importance of questioning orders. Captain Mira had taken his place, the first human to lead a fully integrated fleet. Sujin stood at the navigation console, her connection to the Miru allowing her to sense the path ahead. She smiled and said the ship was ready. Tai-Ho looked at the star map. It showed over 7 million uncharted systems, worlds the architects had seeded and then left alone. Each one was a mystery. Each one was a possibility. Haywin's voice spoke in his mind, warm and patient after 50,000 years of waiting. It asked where he wanted to go. Tai-Ho thought about the journey that had brought him here. A salvage auction, a half-credit bid, a cut on his hand that changed everything. He had been nobody, a man with no future, buying dead metal in a junkyard. Now he was standing at the edge of forever. He smiled and gave his answer. Everywhere, the HFY moved and the stars welcomed them home.